welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching Gulf Today on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Gaza's only mental health hospital is overwhelmed with more than 100 patients daily, many of them children, as the region struggles under ongoing violence despite the October 10th ceasefire, while Israeli fire killed 3 Palestinians near Rafah on Monday, further testing the fragile US-backed truce as tensions remain high. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani has said that disarming armed factions is only possible after the complete withdrawal of US-led coalition forces, which are to be withdrawn by September 2026. Dubai-based consortium has petitioned India's Supreme Court after its winning bid for the redevelopment of Mumbai's Dharavi slum was cancelled. The 2.4 square kilometer project, home to over 1 million people and worth an estimated 125 billion dirhams, is one of Asia's most ambitious urban transformation plans. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will visit the White House on November 18th for talks with President Donald Trump and amid pushes for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has invited Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa to Germany to discuss the deportation of Syrian citizens with criminal records. Merz has also vowed to implement a tougher migration policy, marking a sharp shift from Angela Merkel's open-door approach. Microsoft has announced a $15.2 billion investment in the United Arab Emirates through 2029 with approval from the Trump administration to export NVIDIA chips for its UAE data centers, as the UAE seeks to become a global artificial intelligence hub. An Israeli media channel has reported that the United States of America is pressuring Israel to permit the safe passage of some 200 Hamas operatives currently hiding in tunnels beneath the IDF-controlled areas of southern Gaza. US President Donald Trump has endorsed Andrew Cuomo in the New York City mayor's race against Zohran Mamdani. He has also stated that if Mamdani wins, he will contribute very little to the federal funds. Now we start with Middle East. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has made a surprise visit to the US-operated Civil Military Coordination Center as American forces work on the planning and implementation of Phase 2 in Gaza ceasefire deal. The center was established to support the stabilization efforts inside of Gaza and facilitate humanitarian and security assistance that is under development as part of the broader Trump administration peace plan. The Director of National Intelligence revealed that right now 16 countries and 20 NGOs are working side by side as part of this multinational civilian and military force aimed at bringing stability to Gaza, while ushering in a new chapter for the Middle East. Now for this discussion, we welcome Yossi Cooper-Rosser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us today. Now, looking at this, how might the U.S.-led civil military coordination efforts in Gaza influence Israel's security strategy moving forward?
Well, I think we are definitely in line with the Americans, and we all want to see the implementation of the peace plan that was put forward by President Trump in late September. And this center is coordinating mainly the military activities that are happening on the ground and the civilian activities, everything that has to do with aid and humanitarian aid flowing into the Gaza Strip. I think so far we are working very well with them. There might be some points of disagreement in the future, and right now, for example, there is this issue whether we should allow the Hamas terrorists that were caught in the area of Rafah in southern Gaza Strip, to leave safely the places where they're under siege of the Israelis, or shall we insist on them giving up and going out to our custody? And the Americans are trying to convince us to let them go, and we refuse to do so, especially because they were involved in terror attacks against us after the ceasefire came into effect and actually breached the ceasefire and killed 3 Israeli soldiers. So this is one point where we can have different opinions, but definitely on most issues we see things eye to eye. And the fact that the Americans have proposed now a resolution for the Security Council about the implementation of the Trump plan that is very much in line with what Israel expects is a testimony for the good relations that characterize Israel and the United States. What we see is that the Americans are very committed to moving forward with this plan, including the disarmament of Hamas. That's a very positive indication from an Israeli point of view, because that's exactly what we want to see happening.
Although you mentioned that American and Israeli interests are aligned, what risks and opportunities does this multinational stabilization force present for that area's long-term regional interest?
Well, first of all, it has to do with turning Gaza into a place where there's not going to be terror attacks against Israel like the 7th of October terrible massacre repeating itself. That's the most important thing, and we all want to see that happening. Secondly, if the plan is implemented with the involvement of all kinds of Muslim and Arab countries, then there's a greater chance that this would lead to widening of the Abraham Accords, and the visit of Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia in Washington is very important in this respect. Also, the visit of President Shara from Syria is also important. Maybe this would lead to some security arrangements between Israel and Syria. We are hopeful that the solving of the problems in Gaza would pave the road for better relationships between Israel and its neighbors. And we are looking forward to see how the Americans are masterminding this operation and overseeing it.
With that, I would like to thank Yossi for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in the topic. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration is urging Israel to allow foreign journalists into Gaza now that a ceasefire is in place. According to sources, some parts of Gaza remain more dangerous than others, with Israel still in control of the eastern half of the Strip, following the October 10th start of the ceasefire. Even so, the Trump administration has renewed its request for journalists to be given access to the Strip. Israel's policy, determined by the defense minister and the IDF, has been to deny independent access to all journalists to Gaza since the beginning of the war. It has, however, allowed Israeli journalists and, to a lesser extent, foreign journalists to enter Gaza as embedded reporters with IDF forces. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, could increased U.S. involvement and U.S.'s push for the journalists, allowing the journalists to enter Gaza, does it affect Israel's autonomy in managing its border and defense policies?
No, the question was that the problem was that there was a war waged in Gaza, and we were worried about the security of the journalists. And many of the journalists that operate in Gaza are actually terrorists disguised as journalists. So we have to make sure that that this is not the case with those foreign journalists that are coming in. As long as Hamas is there, we are hesitating whether to let the journalists in if the implementation of the plan is going to proceed as planned and Hamas is going to disarm. I don't see any reason why we won't let journalists in. But so far, the war is not over. There's a ceasefire. It's not the end of the war. And we have to see Hamas disarmed before this can happen. There's an American request to let them in. We should have to look at the details and modalities of who is going to be allowed to enter, to where, and so on and so forth, because we don't want to put anybody in harm's way.
And how might this phase of the ceasefire deal reshape Israel's relationship with neighboring Arab states and international partners?
Well, this ceasefire is allowing us to better communicate with our neighbors, and especially with the Egyptians. I think they are playing a major role here, and some others. And we want to see them involved in the next stage, and we have to discuss this with them. Everybody understands that nobody is going to be able to operate in the Gaza Strip without our consent and approval. And that is why we have to discuss with everybody what kind of activities they're going to have in Gaza and how this is going to be in line with widening the Abraham Accord and making it the agreement regarding Gaza, jumping board for widening the normalization of relations between Israel and its neighbors, and bringing not only its neighbors, by the way, beyond its neighbors. I hope that this will affect also our relations with Indonesia and other countries in the Muslim world. And we shall find a way for these countries to be integrated into the implementation of the plan in Gaza and also establish better relations with Israel.
Right. Thank you very much, Yossi, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay on the region. The Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has stated that Hamas is ready to hand over control of Gaza to a Palestinian committee after meeting the ministers from Arab and Muslim nations seeking to advance the fragile ceasefire. Turkey's relations with Israel collapsed during the Gaza war, and it has been a harsh critic of Jerusalem, but also served as a key mediator of the tenuous 3-week-old ceasefire. Now this is pushing for Muslim nations to bring their influence to bear on the reconstruction and future governance of the embattled Gaza Strip. Earlier, the ceasefire was brokered by the U.S. President Donald Trump on October 10th, which halted the 2-year of war sparked by the Hamas-led October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. Now we go back to Yossi Cooper-Wasser for this discussion. Yossi, thank you for staying with us. How credible is Hamas's stated willingness to hand over control of Gaza to a Palestinian committee from Israel's security perspective?
Well, unfortunately, this is not enough. What Hamas is supposed to do, according to the plan that President Trump has endorsed and presented, is to disarm. It's not only giving up the civilian control of the Gaza Strip. They have to make sure that they don't pose any threat to Israel and to the stability of Gaza. And in order to do that, they are supposed to disarm and lay down their arms. If they do that, then we are talking about something serious. And unfortunately, this meeting led by the Turks did not specifically call for Hamas to lay down their arms. That's what is needed. And delivering the civilian control to other Palestinian hands is a part of the deal, but it's not the entire deal, and it's not enough. What we need to see happening is for Hamas to accept that they give up the weapons and that they don't pose any more threat of terror to Israel and to the stability of the Middle East. That's what we need to see. And they refuse to do that so far, because they are worried that this would mean, this would be seen as an admission by them that they lost the war, and that the 7th of October was a mistake, a terrible mistake for the people of Gaza, for Hamas itself, for the idea of getting rid of Israel and wiping it off the map, and so on and so forth. And because of that, they refuse to accept the idea that they have to disarm, even though they are supporting the plan, with the exception of this article that is the most important one.
Thank you very much, Yossi, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we stay on this topic. Egyptian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Tamim Khalaf has stated that an estimated $70 billion will be required for the reconstruction of Gaza following the devastating conflict that has left large parts of the Strip in ruins. He has stressed that this rebuilding effort will demand extensive international support and coordination to restore basic infrastructure, housing, and essential services for millions of displaced Palestinians. Khalaf has stated that Hamas recognizes it has no place in the future governance of Gaza, signaling a shift in regional diplomatic efforts towards establishing a new political framework that prioritizes stability, reconstruction, and representation of the Palestinian people through a more inclusive and accountable administration. Now we go back to Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Yossi, for staying with us. Now, looking at all the topics we have discussed today on this ceasefire, could the current ceasefire framework realistically lead to a sustainable security arrangement for Israel in Gaza?
Well, basically, yes, it could. If it is implemented properly, it can lead to much better situation for everybody, not only for Israel. This is the idea of that lies behind the plan. And this, again, as I said, is totally conditioned by the readiness of Hamas not only to understand that it doesn't have a role in the civilian governance of Gaza City, of Gaza Strip, but it is depending on the readiness of Hamas to disarm altogether. And this has not been the case so far. As a matter of fact, they don't even show real readiness to give up the control of the civilian side, because they want to be deeply involved in depicting the people that are going to be members of the technocratic government that's going to rule Gaza. And they want to have an impact on the decisions taken there by getting involved in the overruling body that's going to be made of the Palestinians, and they want to be integrated into that. So I don't think that Hamas is really under the understanding that this is what needs to be done in order to make this plan implemented. I think that the Egyptians are talking about reconstruction and $70 billion that are going to be needed for that and all these kind of things. That's very nice. But, well, it's not going to happen as long as Hamas doesn't disarm, because this is the condition of any reconstruction. There's not going to be any reconstruction before Hamas is disarmed. And this is the plan. And we have to focus, and the Egyptians have to focus now, and together with the Turks and the Qataris, who promised President Trump that this is going to happen, they have to focus on making sure that Hamas is disarmed. That's the condition that would allow us moving forward towards having a different leadership in Gaza City, technocratic leadership that is focused on improving the living conditions of the people of Gaza and not about wiping Israel off the map. And this would also allow the international community to move forward with the reconstruction effort.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Yossi Cooper-Wasser for staying with us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on. British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has called for increasing humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, describing it as a crucial step towards achieving a genuine path to peace in the region. Cooper has stated that Israel has no excuse for delaying aid to Palestinians in Gaza and has called for a Jordanian route to be opened from a warehouse full of aid in the country. She has added that British aid, including food and shelter supplies, is also ready in warehouses and is waiting permission to enter Gaza. Cooper has emphasized the urgent need to open more crossings and lift restrictions on aid entry to enable the United Nations and NGOs to scale up their humanitarian efforts in the Gaza Strip. Now for this discussion, we welcome Peter Baum. He's a foreign editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us again. Good to see you. Peter, now looking at this, as a British minister, also we saw Egyptian ministers, the call for aid and the call for access to Gaza Strip increases. Is there any reliable, trustable organization that could be trusted for aid?
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Yes, there probably is, but not under the previous conditions where aid got through. In fact, Yvonne Cooper is being criticised for her statement. In the UK, she's now being criticised for those statements because where there is a real famine in Sudan, the British government has been eerily silent. Now we know from all the propaganda from October the 7th, the pro-Hamas propaganda being spewed by Al Jazeera and various other media outlets, including the BBC, that aid was still getting through, but we were seeing these false AI pictures of starving Palestinian children. However, when all the Palestinian hostages were released and we saw the joy on our global television screens of Palestinians surrounding the released Palestinian prisoners, not one of them was affected by famine. So the idea that sufficient aid is not getting through to the Palestinian territories is actually a false narrative that's kept being played over and over again by politicians to placate a domestic audience. We've also known in the past that the foreign aid, billions of dollars of foreign aid that has been given by Western countries and countries such as Qatar, the wealthy Arab states, has gone in to line the pockets of the Palestinian leadership, whether it's the PA or the Hamas leadership, who have billions of dollars stashed away in Qatari and Turkish bank accounts. So which organisation has been responsible for delivering aid has been facilitating corruption. And at the moment, the Israelis and the Americans certainly do not trust UNRWA, the organisation that for 70 years has facilitated such corruption. So therefore, there needs to be a different mechanism. Now, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was one mechanism, but naturally, that was criticised because it broke the business model of the UNRWA of facilitating aid. So somehow, Trump and the Israelis, together with the good faith actors, Egypt and Turkey, have to come to a decision as to which organisation or organisations they are going to use to start delivering aid today. Now, it's still being done by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, but UNRWA still want to play a part. And actually, there should be no room for UNRWA until the corrupt leaders of that organisation are brought to account.
Right. Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has stated that Lebanon has no choice but to negotiate with Israel amid ongoing tensions along the border and repeated Israeli airstrikes on the country. According to a statement from the presidency, Aoun has emphasized that Lebanon's national interest must take precedence over political, religious, and sectarian considerations. He has urged politicians to prioritize national unity over electoral ambitions and to move beyond sectarian divisions that have long undermined the country's stability. Aoun has reiterated Lebanon's readiness to enter talks aimed at ending the Israeli occupation and restoring its territories, emphasizing that diplomacy, not escalation, is the way forward. U.S. Envoy Thomas Barak is currently leading indirect mediation efforts between Lebanon and Israel following months of cross-border violence. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Peter Baum. He's a foreign editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Peter, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how might Lebanon's willingness to negotiate with Israel reshape regional security dynamics, and how effective is U.S.-led mediation so far?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. But let's be honest about this. Everybody knows that the only destabilizing force in Lebanon at the moment is the Hezbollah military force. Everybody knows that. Hezbollah still wants to rearm, still thinks she can be a powerhouse militarily as she seeks to recreate herself after the appalling defeat she suffered during the 2 years since October the 7th. The Lebanese people also know that Hezbollah is a destabilizing force. But nevertheless, Hezbollah has support within Lebanon, especially amongst the Shia community, which are at odds with both the Christian community and the Sunni Muslim community in Lebanon, and also the Druze to some extent. So as long as Hezbollah can be encouraged to demilitarize as the pressure is being put on Hamas to being demilitarized, and as long as Iran is out the picture as a supporting, a destabilizing factor for Hezbollah, then only then can the Lebanese people seek to achieve the peace they want with Israel. Because I assure you, whilst Hezbollah retains a military presence, Lebanon will continue to be stabilized. And I think the Americans and the Arab states and the Lebanese people themselves witness this. Of course, Iran, because of her isolation politically, her defeat militarily, the defeat of most of her proxies in the area, is still trying to create havoc within Lebanon. And the Lebanese people themselves must decide if they still want a Hezbollah with a military capability or not. If they decide not, then there's peace for Lebanon and obviously a chance for peace with Israel. But until Hezbollah are demilitarized, and everybody knows this, there will always be havoc and chaos within Lebanon.
Yes, we will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Peter Baum, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we stay in the region after a ministerial meeting on Gaza in Istanbul, Turkey, and 6 of its Muslim allies have said that Gaza's future must be Palestinian-led and must avoid any new system of tutelage. Turkey is pushing for Muslim nations to bring their influence to bear on the construction of the embattled territory of Gaza. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has urged the international community to support Palestine in its governance diplomatically, institutionally, and economically. He has also stated that Israel is violating the ceasefire terms and that Turkey does not want to start a legit genocide again, does not want to see the genocide start again in Gaza. Let's listen in.
İsrail ateşkesi düzenli biçimde ihlal ediyor ve insani yardımın ihtiyaç duyulan düzeyde ulaştırılmasına engel oluyor. Artık son derece kritik bir aşamaya ulaşmış durumdayız. Bugünkü toplantıya katılan ülkelerin ortak bir görüşü var. Gazze'deki soykırımın yeniden başlamasını istemiyoruz. Gazze'de bir yeniden yapılanmaya, yeniden inşaya ve nüfusun tekrar yerine dönmesine ihtiyacı var, yaralarını sarmasına ihtiyacı var. Fakat bunun yaparken de sizin de ifade ettiğiniz gibi yeni bir vesayet düzeninin oluşmasını kimse görmek istemiyor açıkçası.
And that's a wrap on Gulf Today. Keep watching News 6 World for more news updates from around the world.